there's too many of you crying.
Welcome to another edition of What's Hot. I'm Howard Eagle, your host. As always, we'd like to thank the community for tuning in and remind you that you can catch us right here at RCTV, Channel 15, every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. If you'd like to contact us regarding the possibility of coming on the show to give us feedback or for any other reason, please feel free to give us a call at 752-1426. That's 585-752-1426. Or drop us a note at howard.eagle90@gmail.com. howard.eagle90@gmail.com. Joining us today is a very special guest, really a returning guest, Mr. Kerry Coleman. Welcome back. As some of you probably recall, Mr. Coleman was here about a month ago, maybe a little more than a month ago, and we were discussing the treatment of parents by Rochester City School District officials, by many Rochester City School District officials, and the whole claim on the part of district officials that they welcome, parent engagement, they want parent engagement and so forth, but when we watch how they treat parents, in many cases it seems very clear that just the opposite is true. We know, many in the community are aware that your case in particular represents a very outstanding example of the ultimate kind of mistreatment that parents experience in this district. So if we can, let's just start give a quick overview, and then we want to talk about some other issues that we didn't get a chance to touch on last time, but just give the viewing audience a quick overview of what happened.
Well, I'm a former district employee. I have a child in the school district. I was sent to prison for violating the order of protection for taking my child back to school. The appellate courts overturned my case because the order of protection was illegal, and this is a labor dispute. Okay. This is a retaliation by the district and its officials, Carol Briggs, Van White, at that time, Kim Dice Fawcett, Alpha Daily Majors, just to name a few individuals in that district. And what they did is they, because I'm a veteran, they try to make it seem like that, like to do a lot of veterans in this country, that I'm PTSD, I'm unstable, I'm this, I'm that. That wasn't the case. I'm just trying to get facts and issues. And when I sue them, it was the first time that I guess an individual that was an aide there or a worker that sued them under civil rights. Okay. And this individual, Kim Dice Fawcett, was running from interim superintendent. She couldn't have a civil rights case over her head and be superintendent.
So just to be clear, when you say running, we know it wasn't an official like election, but she was competing for that job.
Yes. Okay. So it got to a point where, if I spoke out or I'm getting arrested. If I did this, I'm getting arrested. And it's basically her connection with her husband or that's there. He was at that time the chief of staff of the city school district. Very connected.
Of the city school district?
Excuse me, of the city of Rochester.
Yes.
So, I would wake up with police cars in front of my house. If I went to a store, I was followed. It was just incredible. So they got to a point whereas, like I said in the last show, that me and my wife took our child out of the district and started homeschooling. We did it good for about a year, 2 years. And when it was time for her to come to compete for this position, she couldn't have that. Okay. So what they did is they got an individual that ran the homeschooling department to file a complaint with Carol Briggs and Charles Johnson with CPS to have charge me with educational neglect if I didn't bring my child back to school. Okay. And when I talked to Mr. White first because of the illegal order of protection.
Mr. White, this is Van White, who's currently the president of the board of the school board.
He claims that he didn't, but he did, which I have witnesses in the statements, which I'm glad. I want to say from the last show, I had a lot of emails, and I turned over a lot of the information because I have no problem with transparency because I'm making some serious accusations here. And the serious accusations have to be backed up with facts. Sure. I'm not like Mr. White or other individuals in the district and have this we shall hope type mentality. This is not about that. This is about justice. And in order for us to have justice, we need to stop treating our parents and blaming our parents about different shortcomings that was caused by you and other individuals in our district over the years, you know, that basically been ripping our kids off, been ripping our parents off, and then ripping the system off. You know, and that's what I basically really want to say.
Okay.
You know?
So that's the background. That's
Yes.
the overview.
Yes.
Now there's so many issues involved here.
Yes.
You know, and your case sort of exemplifies a much larger problem and issue. It's not just you, even though your case is outstanding. This happens to many parents. We know that because we're working with some of those parents.
Yes.
So there were other details that we never got to. Let's talk about some of those.
Well, I just want to talk about the parent example of the parent at School 45.
Okay.
You know, this parent has a warrant. You know, because this administrator made some false accusations, almost like the SOP what they did to me.
Yes. This is Miss Lisa Rogers.
Yes.
Lisa Rogers, whose grandson is at School 45.
Right. So now,
And I know she doesn't mind us calling her name.
yes. So it's kind of ironic that the same people that was involved in my case are involved in this case. Carol Briggs, you know, Chuck Johnson, the same individuals.
Okay.
As you know, how can you have something change when you have the individuals that's part of the problem to solve it? You can't get that. You're not going to get the same unequal, unbiased type of result as you can. It's just pathetic. This lady is acting in the capacity as a parent,
Yes.
and you want to arrest her for coming to get her kid. But then we always hear about these things on the 13th hour when it blows up. So now we got a school board member, Shirley Adams,
Mary Adams.
Mary Adams, excuse me, basically want to pay her bail under the table, where this individual and their school board should have went at the process. What is wrong with this process?
Yes, yes, yes.
Why is this happening?
Yes.
Now, on the full side, if you look step outside the circle, now you opening yourself for litigation, which takes more money from the district, more money from our kids, and instead of just basically dealing with these, how can I say, flawed individuals. And they don't want to do it because of the political connections that's involved here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so we end up then with, you know, something that I talk about a lot, many of us talk about in this community, is the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
But now that is, I think for many people, abstract, almost like rhetoric. But this is putting a face on what we're talking about. We're talking about issues that happen, that occur at the school level for students and parents that could be resolved if people are, you know, really compassionate and caring and have the students and parents' best interest at heart. These issues can be resolved before they blow up. This situation at number 45 had a long history before the what we believe is illegal warrant was issued. But instead people react by getting law enforcement involved when that's not necessary, resulting in criminal records for people. So when we talk about a school to prison pipeline, this is not rhetoric.
Right.
This really is a direct feeder into the criminal justice system, emanating at the school level.
I'm going to give you an example, exactly what you're talking about. When you have a system that's just not based on, you know, seeing these kids succeed. And, you know, and I'm not saying the system as a whole is like that, because there's a lot of good teachers out there that's in the district.
But unintended consequences. The bottom line is if it's working or not, and it's not.
It's not. So what they do is they'll try to alienate you as an individual that's just disgruntled with the system. But it's too many people being alienated. I'll give you an example. There was an employee there in the city school district named Rita Herring. She was working in the central office. She, in turn, basically went against this individual, Kim Dice Fawcett, and was applying for a position. This individual did not know that Ms. Herring had a PhD. Okay. So when this individual went for the position, Ms. Fawcett and the other was on that panel said, well, you don't have a PhD, you're lying to us. And this is the bunch of nonsense that goes on. So when the lady went out into her car and got her PhD and showed it to her, then this is when the games began. Now, Mr. White says games don't exist like this
okay.
in the school district, and I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
Okay, so when she got the PhD and she brought it up, she didn't get the job, but they were shocked that she had it. So automatically now, Ms. Dice just got her PhD. So this is competition, so I got to get you out of here. She takes an individual named Shirley Billups Bell, right, and has this girl to do her evaluation. Now, Shirley Billups Bell has equivalent of maybe an associate's degree.
Okay.
How can she be this lady's supervisor?
Okay.
You know, so she fires her, gives her a bad evaluation, they fired her. Ms. Herring comes back and sues them and wins. She's now a superintendent of schools in another state. I don't want to just, I haven't talked with her and say where it's at, but she's now a superintendent.
This is a case
schools.
I'm not familiar with.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a lot of stuff. So when Mr. White says, oh, well, I'm doing everything I can, he already knew about the type of stuff that exists down there. I give you an example of the principal over at Monroe High School. You had the community and the parents come out and say, this is what we want. We want this man. But again, not saying what's behind the scenes, and people need to look at personal vendettas. You know, this is what's taking away from our kids, because we might have a good person that has our kids' interests best at heart, and because of someone's personal shortcomings, now they're being ostracized.
Yeah, the Ramirez case, the former principal of Monroe High School, who they just moved, now he's going to be over the program at Marshall. That's a very interesting case because Superintendent Vargas recruited this man personally to come to Monroe and help improve conditions there.
And he did.
School, and he did.
And he did.
But apparently he rubbed some of the wrong key players, and I'll just say it in this case because people who know what's going on are aware of it. It's a group of teachers, disgruntled teachers at Monroe, who apparently are against change and against taking directions. And I suspect, particularly from a Latino man, that's my opinion. Well, I mean, I can't show that. But then they remove him from Monroe, right, and bring back the principal who was there before he was recruited.
And after they hired another teacher at with a $30,000 a year raise, compared to an administrator from Avon to come here. Now she doesn't have a job.
Right.
So, I mean, people.
She was hired specifically to take the principalship of that school
at Monroe.
Yeah.
So now let's look at this. You know, let's look at this from a business standpoint. So you make decisions like that, that shows poor leadership. That shows poor decision making. That shows basically a bottom line. You just don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, sure. It certainly was poor leadership. We know that Mr. Ramirez found out about his being removed from the school via the media, right? And so Dr. Vargas had to admit that publicly in a school board meeting, and apparently he thought it was sufficient just to say, I apologize, I messed up. You know, but we're talking about people with six-figure salaries who are supposedly managing the entire district day to day and making these kinds of critical mistakes, and the board apparently not saying anything. It's almost like they give this guy carte blanche to do whatever he wants.
I'll give you another example of that, and I want people just to look and just, you know, you got to just connect the dots. Mr. Ramirez, that Thursday we had the meeting. A lot of people showed up.
The school board meeting, yes.
The principal of East High School, right, basically said at that meeting, he said, listen, I'm going to say what I got to say because I believe this is wrong, justly wrong. Not because he's Hispanic, not because he may be African American, but because it's just basically wrong. So he said what he had to say, and it was very touching, you know. Not Monday morning. He said when he left the podium to us that, you know, they're going to come after me now. And not Monday morning hit right after that meeting. Van White is on the news saying that he has to be held accountable and these places has to be held accountable. But now all of a sudden now when you're speaking up what they should be doing, they're coming after people. I can't think of the principal's name used to run Wilson. She was, she got Wilson out of the hole.
Not Marilyn Patterson
Marilyn
Grant?
Patterson Grant is another
Yeah.
example. She was going to be in competition. She could have been a perfect school superintendent here. She knows the system. She's within the system, you know, and she's academically astute. Okay, so now when she goes to central office, you get, again, you got these powers that be here. They're attacking the core leadership, people that has substance, that can take our kids a long way. So when you gut these people out and keep the riffraff, what do you expect far as graduation rates, retention far as attendance, and et cetera? I don't care what Mr. White can say. I don't care what Malik Evans says. I don't care what Ms. Adams says. You know, you can talk the rhetoric, but the facts and the statistics says what it is.
Yes, and
You know?
the city school district certainly is in deep, there's no question, in deep crisis. There doesn't seem to be any realistic plans for improvement, none that I'm aware of. It's the same old rhetoric that we've heard for decades, and conditions are not getting better. In terms of that school board meeting where hundreds of people came out to support Mr. Ramirez. I don't think he would mind me saying his name. Mr. Jason Muhammad, who was a vice principal under Mr. Ramirez at Monroe, also spoke out and said the same thing. Now, I expect retaliation. It came in the form of him applying for a coaching job. He's been coaching for, I don't know what it is, 17, 18 years or something.
A lot of years.
And so then they tell him that we'll give you a coaching position for 1 year, but you got to sign a contract that you won't apply after that, which is crazy. What they're trying to get him to do is discriminate against himself and to negotiate on behalf of his union unilaterally. So, I mean, if he agreed to something, which he didn't, but I found out, I spoke with him recently, that that situation worked out because I think he was getting ready to do a lawsuit also, but they backed away from it. So these kinds of things, we're not talking about isolated incidents. They really do go on.
District as a whole. This is the district as a whole. I mean, it's amazing. You know, when I sit here, and again, and nothing against people at DKX, right? But when I say soapbox, that's what I literally mean, a soapbox. Because Mr. White is allowed to do that because he brings in a lot of advertising revenue to that station. So I can understand that from a business aspect, but we got to look at it with a moral aspect because anytime you have on your call letters is DKX, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, two of our great leaders, and Douglas. You know, it's just, you know, and then you do things like that. And it's not the first time you've been accused of this. So nothing against DKX, but I'm saying to them, allow the two-way conversation.
Certainly.
With this.
And other voices. Something that's very frustrating for me as an educator and a parent and a longtime community activist is there's this belief on the part of many that when somebody like Van White speaks about education, he's speaking for the entire black community. He's the expert, he knows, and he doesn't speak for me either. And he is not outstanding in terms of his knowledge of education. He is not. There are many of us in this community who understand education a lot more than Van White. So it's frustrating that DKX will not allow for other voices, you know, and
I'm willing to come on, I'm going to say this on air, I'm willing to come on DKX. We don't have to debate about my case, what me and Mr. White has personally. We can debate about the issues. We can debate about some of the lies he has basically put out here. And if you are truly a station or a community station, you will allow this to happen. I have no problem with that. This is a school board president. I'm just a regular citizen. If I'm not afraid to deal with the facts, then he shouldn't be either, because he's elected by the people to deal with the facts. I don't want to hear no spin doctrine, what you do on DKX constantly every Friday. And DKX only allows certain callers to come through and speak to these people. Rain, one of the disc jockeys there, brought up a good point last Friday about here's a parent, because as a parent didn't want their child advanced because they failed all their subjects and they advanced them anyway.
Social promotion, which is a crime.
The parent didn't want it. And Van's on the air trying to justify it. You know, but I'm gonna tell you what it's about. and a lot of people don't understand this in education. You have a cohort. You have certain amount of students that go at a certain time. All these students as a group expected to graduate as a group at a certain time. So if you have, let's say, 15 come out of that group, that throws the numbers off.
Certainly, and it's 15. The numbers are huge. They start out with these large numbers of, let's say, for example, 1,000. By the time they get to the year that they should be graduating, it's not even half. In many cases, are still part of the so-called cohort. Right. So yeah, social promotion is a serious issue that we need to deal with. The Rochester City School District does not have a policy that supports social promotion. But the practice is
done.
And it's very, very damaging. And this is how we end up with so many young people sitting in high school, reading still, writing, thinking.
At the 6th grade level.
Or lower.
Sometimes.
And that's a serious issue that needs to be dealt with. Make your point, but before our time slips away, I wanted you to get back to where you are in your case and so forth.
Right now, I'm in front of, again, for the Judge Manerick, and the Attorney General has asked for different types of extensions. And I go in front of her on the 18th. And the bottom line is this.
On the 18th of September?
18th of September. Okay. And the bottom line is this, okay? I was an innocent man. My record was sealed. How can you sit back and say I'm guilty of something? So if I'm not guilty in this court, how can I be guilty in this court? You know, I want to go back to St. Louis too also. This is typical now. That's the new racism I'm speaking about. You know, the subversive racism. You know, they'll jump up and down and say, I'm not a racist, but your actions show that you are racist. Because basically, you've hurt my family. And that goes to Mr. White, that goes to Carol Briggs and all the other, you hurt my family. I don't care what you do now. I'm talking about what you did this, because if you do it back then, you do it again now. And you haven't changed. Carol Briggs is a judge. She has a responsibility as a judge to uphold the law, regardless. And basically, we finding her in my case, the parents of 45, and a lot of other cases is involved. And she cannot be trusted. Mr. White, again, I'm going to emphasize, can't be trusted. I'm bringing these points out because I'm not allowed to speak this on DKX or any other type of media. You know, and it needs to be, and the parents and the people need to come out and say, hey, listen, we're not going to stand for this any much longer.
Yes, and so let's be clear, because we want to make sure our viewing audience understands because some people get confused. They say, wait a minute, he's talking about racism, but Van White is a black man and so forth. But we're talking about a system that you know, routinely functions in a way that it does not treat people of color justly. Yes, and we don't see these kinds of problems in predominantly white school districts and so forth. And people will give a lot of excuses why we don't, but certainly there's no doubt that racism is in its institutionalized form, which individuals, no matter which race they are, support it, right, in many cases, is a factor. It is a factor.
Van White always emphasized, Mr. White emphasized that. I used to be a DA. You're a district attorney, so you have a mentality that person is guilty until proven innocent, not innocent until proven guilty. So if
his job is to convict.
Right, it's to convict, to win at any case or any cause. So now how are you going to jump on the opposite end of the polar spectrum, right?
Become a civil rights.
And become a civil rights attorney.
Okay,
It's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's done for photo shoots. It's personal photo shoots. You know, like the young man that's just basically now that's been accused of murder, and Mr. White has his case. I tell that family, be very careful. Be very careful. Okay.
Yeah. And I want to say this because we certainly don't want to be what's hot. Does not want to be guilty of what we observe in terms of others. So I want to issue an open invitation, and I'll send him a note, by the way, to Mr. White to come here with you. And we could discuss the issues
civilly,
right here.
Very civilly.
Absolutely.
Very civilly.
Because I'm certain he would say, well, that's not fair to say I can't go from being an assistant DA to being a civil rights attorney. In fact, I've heard the spiel before. It was when I was working in that office that I began to realize the system didn't function, and I decided, we could have that discussion.
They let you go because you was ineffective. It wasn't that you decided. See, this is what gets me with him, how he spends words. He says he dropped a lot of cases because he wanted to get on the board and make a change. But you talking about after 8 to 9 years, you're talking about things that you should have known back when you initially took that position.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. He's talking about the reporting of any type of incident with a child. That's already mandated. As educators, we should be reporters off the muscle. So how can you sit and say in a news interview that you're going to do some retraining and you just found out about this? This is part of your responsibility.
Sure.
This is part of your job.
Sure. Yeah.
So don't sit here
And this all came out around the Lamaglio case, around
Yes.
the Matthew Lamaglio case.
And some of the same people we're talking about endorsed this man.
Yeah. Well,
Endorsed him.
that's the nature of politics in this town. I suppose in all towns, but certainly we know
Yes.
that's the nature of politics in Rochester. And so in terms of change, that's where we really want to focus. And what we're trying to impress on the community is there's not likely to be any change unless substantial numbers of us really do band together and become
Yes.
very serious
About this.
about
I can tell you what I'm doing. Right now, I've been talking to a lot of people in Albany about my case, and some very people, I don't want to mention their names because when the jack gets out of the box, they're going to start grabbing these certain people.
Sure.
But the system that's there is flawed, completely across the board. And what these people need to do, and what I'm talking about, this is a law enforcement agency. They need to go in there, like I said in my last show, the flood of Noah, from school board members on down, and just clean it out. Then our kids will have a chance. At least we know we're putting people in place that really have the gumption to make our kids succeed. I can give you an example.
to help them.
Yeah, you got a grant that comes out that's voted on by the school board. And out of that grant, let's say, for example, $100,000 is awarded for this grant. Why is it in every grant that over 2/3 of the money is going towards salary of the individuals that's teaching the grant or teaching that type of program? That's just and you justify it and say, well, it took that much money and my expertise. Well, then you still got the kid back at square one.
Yeah. So that's the bottom line. We never see a significant improvement, right? The condition just seems to continue to worsen.
One excuse after another.
Yeah. And so again, I believe, I'm thoroughly convinced that that's never going to change unless we become really serious about organizing, uniting, being very clear about what the issues are, what we want, and really make concerted, united demands for change.
Right. And I tell people, and I want to tell the listeners and the audience out there, the viewers rather, I'm willing to debate these people, Malik Evans, Van White, the superintendent, on these facts.
Sure.
I don't want to hear no excuses. I don't want to see you around your legal, because your legal whispering in your ear telling you. I want to hear a moral answer. What are you built of to make this right? And so far, you haven't showed me anything.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, so then it speaks to the need for new leadership and the power to elect or select new leadership really is in our hands. Nobody's going to just give up the power. That's what we got. That's what we have to understand. I'm talking about the broader community now. Because it's hard to find somebody who doesn't want change in the Rochester City School District. We all know it's been in crisis for a long time.
System.
But we have to see our roles in terms of producing the change. Otherwise, it's not going to come. We have a few, just about 15 seconds. Give the community a final word, and we'll have you back again very soon.
Take control of your school district. It's a public school district. Take control of your school district. Demand, show up. Because they're saying that we're not involved. We are involved. But at their only terms, they only want the certain parents they can buy and sell.
All right, we always end by saying no justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace. And no justice, right, will there be peace. Because we can see this unraveling, not just in St. Louis, all over the country. People are standing up.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. brother, brother.